Hello, my friends. So I was actually not planning to record this video this morning. I was purely inspired as I was having some coffee. You see, like I just woke up. I still have even my thing I wear recently. I started recently wearing these eye patches. They look so cute, and actually, I do think that they are helping to to remove dark circles. But anyway, this video is of course not about that. But this video is going to be me, I guess, diving in a little bit into the upcoming energy of Black Moon in the sign of Scorpio. Of course, this is the, it's not, you cannot really say it's a transit because it's not a planet, obviously, but still it is an energy that we are going to be consciously or unconsciously connecting from March 27 to approximately December 20th. And Black Moon in Scorpio is something that's going to be, I think, extremely interesting for a lot of us, especially, of course, people who have Scorpio in their natal chart. But not just that, everybody will feel the energy of Black Moon in the sign of Scorpio. And actually, when I was having coffee in the morning today, I was thinking a lot about the theme of, sensuality, and how when we are not fully connected, right, to our body, to the sexual creation energy that exists within us, it's like we are not fully activated. Doesn't matter how spiritual you think you are, it doesn't matter, even how much you do. Something that I recently experienced, a bit of, I guess, activation of energy. As far as it can go, I guess, as a person who also consciously practices celibacy. But I realized how when we are not connected to our sexual energy, which a lot of us are either not connected to it, it lies dormant, or it could also be that we're not connecting to it in a healthy way. It could be, like in the world, there's so much shadow, I think, that exists when it comes to that, that area of life. Everything has to do with sensuality, body, physicality, creation, procreation, even. It goes into extremes quite often. It goes either into the extreme of perversion, like some dark stuff, right, that I don't even want to talk about, or it goes into complete disconnect very often, where a person is just not connected. There could be a lot of judgment even when it comes to those energies. There's so much, probably this is one of the most interesting areas of human life, in a human experience, area of sex, area of intimacy, area of even our own sensuality, whether feminine or masculine. Even if we are not practicing or not participating in those things, right? There's so much there, so much potential, but at the same time so much shadow. This is where I think a lot of us also don't necessarily feel very safe often, because if you think about it, even if you are somebody, let's just say, you are not really somebody who goes into extremes, like going maybe too much, right, like left and right, essentially doing it everywhere, or even if you are somebody who is like not also super puritanical or super celibate or something like this, still very often, if you think about it, right, you enter a relationship, and for a lot of us, one of the biggest kind of intimate moments when you enter, especially a new relationship, is when we become intimate with another person. And then again, if this doesn't necessarily happen at the right time, or we don't have yet necessary boundaries set in the relationship, very often there is so much confusion that begins after very often you make love to somebody for the first time. So wherever you find yourself when it comes to this topic, it's definitely a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. And I think when it comes to especially like area of spiritual matters, this is where collective shadow, I think, shines the most. Because if you think about it, even from a religious perspective, in a religion, there's so much, taboo energy. Oh, you only have to have sex that way or that way. In any religion you tap into, there is so many different things you would hear about sex, which I actually, even if you think about it, in ancient times, where a lot of these religions were just forming, it was not as we know it today. When people even think about ancient temples, we think, right, about all this purity, right, especially within religion. There is so much of that, like, oh, you have to be this, you have to be that. But in ancient times, actually, in lots of these temples, it was like sexuality was part of the things that was happening there. To be actually a priestess at that time meant also to know the deep secrets of sex and of physical body, activation of energy through sexuality, and to be able to heal and guide people through that. So, like a lot of people, I think religious people, whether whichever religion they're from, would probably like if they really learned about temple energies and like what it meant at that time to connect to the divine, would probably be like, yeah, not. Of course, there's people who know that stuff, but then there are other people who are super close minded. I think they are not even ready, so to say, to be awakened in that way. And of course, in later times, a lot of these ideas, especially about women, Madonna-Wh complex got introduced, right? A lot of us who are healers these days, we still have a lot of I think, trauma when it comes to different things from the time where, if you remember any of your past lives, if you've been living, in ancient temples, times, that there was a time where women who were priestesses were highly honored, and then at certain time, what happened was that started being abused. Dynamics of power started being intertwined, and this was, I guess, one of the first times when women who were highly connected to their spiritual and sexual power were starting getting abused. Power dynamics started changing, and then of course, somewhere sometime women's power was broken by the introduction of the idea of a Madonna-Wh complex, right, which exists in religion very much, exists in modern culture. There's people who even successfully tapped into the psychological Madonna-Wh complex, made a career out of it. I always think even of the literal singer Madonna, right? She always in their 80s or 90s, when she was just starting her career, she was experimenting so much with that particular even theme. But of course, there is more. Madonna-Wh complex, collective Madonna-Wh complex, is highly engraved in collective consciousness. But I believe that it originated for the big part because a woman truly connected to both her sexual and spiritual energy, the woman who owns both, is a goddess, is a living goddess, which is why, again, I'm not really one of those people who likes to dive into patriarchy or whatever, because I think a lot of the stuff there, like the ideas, are not necessarily the most correct. But I do believe that both for men and for women, there were different things that happen in the world that essentially has abused the beautiful power of a masculine or feminine being, like living god or goddess, and essentially through various things made them disown their power. Like, again, for a woman who is connected both to sexual and her spiritual energy, she becomes a living goddess, which is why for a lot of us we often see the collective shadow of, like, if you, let's just say, if you are in a religious space, right, you as attractive woman, right away there is that, oh, you gotta cover up, or you gotta do this, or you gotta act like this, or if you pose like this, you are naturally spiritual. Like, I, on my channel, there was so many judgmental people that, even in spiritual space, were so full of hate, because they see that if a woman is connected to her spiritual and to her sexual energy and to her beauty, she is a true goddess. If you're just connected to your spiritual energy and you don't look so good, I'm sorry to say it, maybe it's gonna sound kind of mean to somebody, but it's you you have power, yes, but you're not in your full power. Same if you're a beautiful woman, sexual, etc., but you're not connected to your spiritual energy, to your spiritual power, you're also not in your full power. And the Madonna-Wh complex of the collective comes really with that intention, to make women either like this how to say this virginal sort of like type of Madonna situation, or if a woman connects to her sexual energy, then she's painted in the dirty words, dirty comparison. I actually experienced this growing up when I was like barely even in my teen years, and of course I was growing up also in a country where Islam started spreading very very quickly, because it was not religious really, the country. I mean, it was Zoroastrian before, like the conquest, etc., but it was not really a religion during Soviet Union times. And after the collapse of Soviet Union, from independence, there was like kind of like, I could say, double movement. One movement wanted to kind of suppress religion because they were scared of what could happen, because we have neighbors like Afghanistan, for example, and it's scary, right, like over there. So there was part of the government that wanted to heavily suppress it, but then there was another part of, I guess, the population that felt so happy and liberated that Soviet Union regime fell. So now they felt like they can return to religious freedom, etc. So there were a lot of scary things happening when I was growing up, and I remember from a young age hearing different things, such as like, if I dress certain way and somebody attacks me and abuses me, it's going to be my fault, or just a lot of condescending remarks which a child really should not go through, should not hear, at a vulnerable age, at a late, when you're a child still, when you're a young teenager. Old women sometimes attacking, sometimes even in my own family, sometimes religious fanatic, right? People or people who make excuses for religious fanatic, various things, I remember happening to me at that time, where there was just so much of them seeing how I'm about to start rising to my power, connecting to my power, and they essentially wanted to do whatever it is they could to make me feel bad about me having power. That's the society I grew up in, and to this day, I don't really feel it because I'm very blessed to live in the United States of America, where we do have freedom of expression. But at the same time, occasionally here and there, some of these themes remind themselves like a long lost kind of like echoes, and in those moments I remember how much of this still exists in both collective consciousness in the world, and it even reminds me of some of these things I experienced as a child and as a teenager. um, yeah, so these are like heavy themes that I think the world still has to do a lot of work to, I think, transform and overcome, because in so many parts of the world, women are not free in their, in their sexuality. And again, there's religion that plays big parts of big part of that. But also another part of that is in our collective consciousness, like even if you live in America, even if you live in a free country as you think, still you can see sometimes in the collective that dark side that wants to hurt women. And I even think that sometimes the freedom is an illusion, because yes, they so to say allow you to be free, if you even asking permission, of course. But then at the same time, the way that in Western world, I think, because of course you have the extremes of the East and it's scary there, but then in the West as well, it's not necessarily, you cannot say that here, like, certain ideas we have about what is a woman in power are, you know, like perfect either, because here, yes, they will not put a burqa on you, or they will not, tell you that you're property of your husband or whatever. But here, they will put you in boxes. They will say, oh, you want to be spiritual? Then you have to be certain way. Oh, you liberated yourself sexually? Well, you no longer have, can play certain role. You no longer. They try again to introduce sometimes knowingly or unknowingly this collective Madonna-Wh complex. And even I think it's kind of crazy, I don't want to go political here, but I think it's crazy that even in the West we think that a woman's freedom or power has to do with her ability to have abortion or not. Like, again, I don't want to speak about what my opinion on this subject is. Some people who know me know where I stand on this, but I think that it's so crazy that we measure women's power often by, can she have an abortion, or not. She can have an abortion, she's powerful. I, like, again, maybe it's something I don't understand. Again, I grew up in a very different climate, as I shared, right? But I think a lot of our ideas, essentially what I'm trying to say here about being powerful and being in woman's or man's power, I still so fucking twisted. And essentially, I think this time period, going back to astrology, from the end of March to the end of December, is gonna push us somehow, some way, to explore a lot of these ideas, where we stand on some of them, what do we know about ourselves. In my view, what I have arrived on, at least for me, but I think it applies to a lot of our current collective consciousness, including collective shadow, is that for a feminine energy and for a masculine energy for that matter, you do not have, you're not in your full power until both the spiritual and the sexual element of your being is, in unison. Because again, you can say, oh, I'm so sexually liberated, but if you're not conscious in also your sexual energy, that is also kind of not, I don't say it's not correct, but that's also not ideal, let's put it this way. uh, Same goes when you go so much into your spiritual energy, and I've actually experienced more of that one, interestingly enough, where I've gone so much into my spiritual energy. I practiced celibacy like 4 years, and I think it's one thing also, the distinction I want to draw here is that it's one thing to practice celibacy. You can be celibate, but you can still be connected to your sexual energy very much. You know, you can use your imagination how, of course, here. But and it's fine, I think. But there are times when you, yes, especially if you practice celibacy, but sometimes even outside of that, where you don't feel connected to that sexual energy, that creative energy that exists within you. I think it could be definitely when for a long time you haven't, whether consciously, unconsciously, you decided essentially stay out of sex. But it could also be even sometimes, in marriages, right, where like sex is just, put in, put out type of thing, or you just don't feel it and you start disconnecting from your body, you start disconnecting from this creative element within you. Um, and then when you awaken that essentially is when you meet somebody, or just somehow that energy awakens. It could be awakened, of course, through different yogic spiritual practices even as well, and or if of course there's somebody you meet and you know it when you feel it essentially, and you see a contrast of how alive you feel. Like there is an energy that starts opening up within you. It's the energy of creation, it's the energy of healing, it's the energy where when both masculine and feminine are both in their physical and spiritual power, they really become God. Yes, the divine aspect of the feminine, right, connected both to sexual and spiritual energy. Feminine aspect here of creator, creative energy. Masculine aspect also that is fully connected to their spiritual power and their sexual power. When they come together, it's like the whole universe is being born, and it is a very powerful thing, because from such type of union, even as well, of energies, individually they can do this, but if you actually bring also these two energies together, everything can happen from this point. Creation, healing, manifestation of absolutely anything like you can think of. So I dived into quite a few things here. Again, this video was not scripted, not planned. I literally was having coffee and I was thinking about this. But I think essentially my point partially here is that we still have so much to heal when it comes to that. And a lot of it has to do, again, I think it all goes back to the idea of a separation. The idea of, I see this so often again, in religious spaces, of course, where and they all introduce it with good intentions, like even in my own culture, it's like ideas of modesty, etc. And it's beautiful ideas. I don't want to say anything bad about them, but I still feel like a lot of it comes from this very restrictive space where I think we are scared of our full power. So we are restricted. We are trying to make it like, no, no, we are trying essentially to package it in a way that's more digestible. Um, and I don't know, but for me, like I had these experiences in my life which were very healing. One of the most healing experiences in my life was, maybe this gets sound kind of crazy, but there was a time where I was almost naked fully at Burning Man and I felt so safe because nobody touched me, nobody looked at me kind of weird. I mean, of course, when you're a beautiful woman naked, somebody will, like to kind of look, but nobody looked at me in a way which made me feel unsafe. I remember like dancing at a party naked, and I was just like, there were other people also naked essentially, but it was so healing for me because again, I grew up with a lot of this like really screwed up ideas where you wear a mini skirt, you are this, you are that, and people say such mean and nasty words and project the darkness they have inside of them on you. And like, I never could understand that, how they go from how somebody dresses to certain things they say. I never understood the connection even between the two. um if anything, I've seen more of like people who are like portray on public idea of purity and do really sometimes bad things behind the closed doors, but it's not even about that. Yeah, it's not even about that. It's about freedom. And again, I remember when I was at Burning Man and I was essentially like, I mean, I was not like fully naked. I think I had underwear on, like like panties or something, like some kind of shorts, but everything else was essentially without clothes. And it was such a liberating time for me because again, I felt safe. No one judged my body. Nobody tried to attack me. If anything, like, yeah, it's like I don't want to say no one cared, but it was more like it was. I just felt so safe, and it's something that I never experienced before because even in the United States of America, even here, right? Sometimes you go outside and like people catcalling you or whatever, but there it was just, I don't know, it was a beautiful experience. Like I have so much every time I think about Burning Man. I had so many healing experiences for me that happened there. Like at all times when I visited, even when it was triggering, it always ended up being a healing experience. Like I remember, just a quick story time, but like I remember the first Burning Man ever I went to. I was still very insecure at the time. I was comparing myself to how other people look. I did not feel beautiful at that time, even though I was very beautiful. And when we just arrived at my first burn, there was this beautiful girl who was also a badass. She drove this huge, humongous truck. Like, and she was helping us with some of our stuff when we were setting our camp. And she was the most beautiful girl you can imagine. Typically, I would be probably at that age still intimidated by someone like that. She had these big blue eyes, gorgeous long hair. She looked like, honestly, not from this world. And I remember, like, as she was dropping us off, we had this moment when she like looked me very deeply in the eyes, and I could feel she's saying this from the bottom of her heart. She told me, "You are so beautiful," with her big blue eyes looking me in my eyes. And it was not even any kind of sexual moment necessarily, but it was so healing because I saw one beautiful human being looking at me, recognizing the beauty in me that I, even at that time, could not see yet. And we had this experience where, like, I don't know, something within me healed, something within me was reconciled at the time. And I don't know, I still remember it. And it was like, what, 2017, almost like not 10, but I don't know, what is it, 8, 7 years ago, a long time ago. I still remember it, like I have a memory of that like yesterday. So yes, that's definitely something to think about. And I think this is where a lot of collective healing in the world still needs to happen, both for feminine and for masculine energy. For feminine especially, I think, because with feminine there is this whole Madonna-Wh complex that is so relevant, but there is forces, I think, that's still trying to keep it relevant just in new ways. But I really want my point here to be understood well. There is no rising to your divinity if you are only connected to one of these two aspects, because that's what happens often. A person is either, no, very much in their spiritual energy, but they become disconnected from their body. They transcend the body, which you shouldn't be transcending the body as in this human form. You will have an opportunity, when you live this physical world, to transcend your human body. Like I always say, you have all the eternity in the world to be a spirit, but in this human physical body, in this human incarnation, there is, only this incarnation for that. And it's not to be transcended necessarily, but it is to be fully activated. There's many teachings which I disagree with, which talk about how we are here to escape this incarnation cycle. I disagree with that. I think that we are here to bring a higher level of existence on this earth. And yes, maybe ideas like not necessary incarnation. Yes, you can exit the incarnation cycle, or you can incarnate on certain terms, etc. Things like this are possible, but not to a lot of people. I think their ideas are highly disagree within spiritual world about transcending humanity, transcending human experience, transcending what makes you human. It's false. It defies the whole point of why you incarnated. I just honestly, and it's even within a lot of Kabbalists I disagree with, but especially within a lot of Eastern teachings, and for, of course, the religious as well, which talks about how we are here to transcend this humanity, or like become like this, become like that. And uh, I believe and maybe not necessarily so much Kabbalist, because within Kabbalist there is also, it's a different teaching, and not to mix different things here up, but I do believe that we are here to become a fully activated human, like a next level human, like redefine what it means to be human in terms of intelligence, in terms of how we work with our energy. We don't know so much, we've forgotten so much about even energy portals, energy centers that exist within our body. And if you keep trying to put people in boxes, whether, oh, this is a shallow girl because she has lip filler, I don't know, or, oh, this is like this type of person, oh, this is a true mystic because he has a beard and a turban or something like this. We are not gonna get anywhere with that type of thinking. And again, nothing against turbans. I have a great friend in Bali who is a Sikh healer, Sikh, right? That's how you say it, who wears turban, and he's a great healer. But it's not about that. You can, of course, but even he, by the way, is super connected to his physical body and teaches a lot of things to connect to physical body, not to disconnect, to connect to sexual energy that exists within us, not to disconnect. But again, the physical aspect, being connected to your sensuality, sexual power, beauty, and your spiritual power, your depths, your wisdom. When you connect to both and don't allow people to, you know, separate these two within you. How I remember, even like one time somebody was saying something along the lines, oh, when you go out you dress like that, but like when you do astrology you should dress more modestly. And I was like, but why? I do agree, by the way, with dressing appropriately for occasion. If I go, let's just say, to play golf, or if I go to ballet, or if I go to a rave, obviously I will dress differently to those things. I'm all for dressing up for occasions, but I am more against the idea how, oh, in order to, like, I have this friend of mine who does her own way of healing. It's not Reiki, nothing like this. She remembered something from her past life where she was a healer, and she started doing this very unique form of energy healing. It's great. She did it on me. Absolutely cannot compare it to anything. And she likes to also wear little short dresses. She was like, I don't want to be like all the healer women who wear super long dresses, etc. It's not my style, to fit into more to some a box or some branding. She's a French girl, my neighbor. Shout out to her if she's watching this. But we were talking about this thing exactly, and she was telling me how I like to wear short mini dresses. Am I still a great, a good healer, right? I don't know how exactly she said, but she's a great healer, just in case she has amazing talent. No, it doesn't say anything about that. Uh, if a person enjoys great food and wine, does it make them less spiritual? No. The fullness of life experience, color, different shades of it. Not like a monk. Again, there is this why I don't like religion, because they perverted so many ideas. Poverty, chastity, right? Like whatever it is. And it does serve, knowing how to restrict and knowing how to say no to some things, whether if you temporarily withdraw, right, from when we do fasting. Actually, I love fasting. This is super powerful. When you temporarily train your mind and body to withdraw from certain things, whether it's sex, body, or like bodily pleasures, could be great, temporarily. But within life, I don't see this as a full solution. And I think sometimes it's been pushed as a full solution in order to truly be like in spirit or pure or whatever. I also don't even understand how, as a spiritual leader, you can advise even on certain things when you yourself don't experience them. Like when you are not experiencing the life itself. As a monk on a mountain, to experience this, you don't fully connect or relate to people who are going through very human, very real things. Yeah. So there's so much to say about this. I could probably keep going and going and going, as I think it's a very relevant topic. Um, and again, it's like so many people will not say it upwards, upfront, but they cannot often reconcile a woman who is both physical and spiritual, triggered, scared of it. What does it mean, though? Does it mean we have to shrink ourselves to keep other people not scared and keep them slave to slave mentality that was introduced to keep them as slaves? not fully who they are meant to be, not fully who they are, but trapped by conditions imposed on them from outside, whether it's through the mind or through something in the physical realm? Or are we here to shine and be our true self? And even perhaps because a lot of us are incarnating from the times when, there was uh, various sisterhoods in the world, various ancient priestess circles. A lot of us have memories of that. And there was a lot going on, by the way, during that time, if anyone remembers. There was so much going on in the world during this time, if anyone remembers. Because, yes, there was a time when there were certain sisterhoods with living goddesses, and then certain things, I don't know, I wonder sometimes if I like the Dune and the, Bene Gesserit idea so much, because it reminds me of something I've been through in my past lives. Because it is true, there were certain things that I do believe very powerful orders of women were doing at that time, but there were certain things that didn't go either according to the plan or were hijacked and sabotaged, essentially, and the sisterhoods fell in the world, and female power as well, that ability to own yourself fully in the spiritual, in the physical, in whatever other realm of existence in this world fell, and then religion essentially just butchered it to the degree that it's crazy, right? Where, you have Madonna-Wh, where you have woman needs to be whatever, this role or that role, or completely, covered up, or it goes on and on and on, and in various movements. Or if a woman is a sex object, only sex object without any substance. If she is sexual, she's a sex object. It's so boxes, like labels, they are so demeaning, meant to disempower. And I think, again, once we remember those ancient incarnations when we had that power, and yes, we lost it somewhere along the way, but if we consciously make that intention to start coming back to it, to start reclaiming all the power, all the light, all the ancient wisdoms that we had, because the world needs it also at that time. It's not random that a lot of us are starting to truly remember right now, more than ever probably, um, certain things from long, long past lives ago. Um, like, this is the time to start remembering. Because if you do connect to that place, and it might come through some experiences that seem superficial. Oh, I'm just dressing the way I always wanted to. What's the big deal? Oh, I'm just speaking my mind like I always wanted to. What's the big deal? Oh, I'm fully owning my voice and my power. Seems like not a big deal, right? It is a big deal. Because if at this moment in time we can fully step in to our power, which is enormous, a lot of people don't even understand how much power they have to create, to influence. We can do magical things. And going into that collective shadow, our own shadow, again, you don't have to go necessarily to collective shadow. It might be, I understand too much. But going into your own shadow and remembering piece by piece, puzzle by puzzle, some of those things where perhaps, you started doing to keep yourself small because it was so scary, so scary to be fully who you are, whether because of outside judgment, whether because you yourself was just like, wow, there's so much I can do. Maybe you were scared of responsibility. That can happen sometimes. Maybe you were just, there's lifetimes and lifetimes of memories, childhood memories, etc., where you just stopped being yourself. But there's more to that, of course, because there are elements of that where we allow ourselves to enjoy, to create something, to fully just be there and feel safe. I think feeling safe is important, because when it comes to sexual energy as well, so many of us don't feel safe. Whether when we are connecting with another individual, where you are experiencing deep intimacy with another individual, or whether we in our own self-expression. So often we feel guilt, right? So often we feel scared, like, okay, is it like, am I going to be punished for this? Am I going to be somehow, is this going to lead to a place where I'm going to be hurt? And again, for each individual, based on their life experiences, it could take different form. But there's something that calls, especially with this black moon in Scorpio. That's how I read this transit, at least. Of course, I'm going to make more just astrological video on that too, because I went very off astrology here, just astrology, at least. And I want to make one more technical, if you will, about that. But there's something about this time period from end of March to end of December 2025, which is going to call us to explore that element of us. Because you know it, when your energy is, especially sexual energy, is not activated and then it gets activated, it's a switch. You know how big of a switch it is. Same goes with spiritual energy. When you're not spiritually awakened and then you wake up, you feel it too. But we want to have both. And there's something here to say about essentially waking up on that level. Owning, reclaiming all the lights, all the sparks of light that were lost. And becoming fully activated human, fully activated living God, living goddess, and seeing what you can do in the world with that kind of energy. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I might edit it a little bit if I forgot to mention something or bring the points all the way home. We'll see. Love you all. Thanks so much for watching. We will talk soon. And if you're watching this now, this is your sign as well, that it is time to fully reclaim your power. It's enormous. Go for it.